Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss how farmers have given up hope that the government are going to help deal with the problems they have and are just planting less for 2022. So although our food production was hit in 2020 due to COVID and again in 2021 due to Brexit, we know that Brexit is still going to hit now in 2022, no matter what the government does. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, the old farming industry has taken a brutal knock of late. There were lots of economic reports last year highlighting just how badly the combination of COVID and Brexit would hit the British economy. Because there were businesses that could take Brexit, they wouldn't be affected by Brexit, even a very hard Brexit, even a no-deal Brexit. But they would be badly hit by COVID. Then there were businesses that could cope with COVID. They were okay during the pandemic. They could manage, but they'd be clobbered by Brexit. A hard Brexit anyway. Farming of crops, at least, was one of those mugged by both. We had crops rotting in the fields last year, just like this year. In both cases, the surface cause was a lack of farm workers. That's ultimately the key cause here, a lack of farm workers, pickers mostly. But under the surface, the root cause, if you pardon the expression, was different each year. Last year, COVID travel restrictions made that travel was difficult and expensive. So a lot of migrant workers stayed away, either because of concerns over the pandemic, very justifiable, or just cost. It was just too much hassle, too much cost. So some farmers spent extra in flying workers in from Eastern Europe in order to get the labour they needed. There was also a campaign to try and attract more British workers to help out. We had tons of produce just rotting in the fields. This year, farmers still couldn't get the labour they needed. But it wasn't the travel restrictions to blame this time. This time it was Brexit immigration policies, not just a block on workers coming into the country. It is still possible to get visas for this type of work. The government did actually allow a bit of an exception, but it's time consuming and costly. Basically, our post-Brexit immigration system has stopped this sort of seasonal work being worth it for EU farm workers. And it's not like there aren't farms in the EU to travel to much more easily. In addition, this sort of labour suffers from the same problems that lorry driving does at a time like this. It's actually hard work for not really enough pay, and shortages have appeared in other sectors. So even when those farm workers might, in theory, still take the job for summer, well, if there's more desirable work in another sector, they'll just take that instead. So we ended up with hundreds of tons of food rotting in our fields again. Not sustainable. And so British farms have been forced to scale down their plans for next year as well. They can't have another year like this. So reports are saying that they're going to be planting less and just leaving the shortfall up to imports. Like, look, we can only grow this amount because this is all we think we can harvest. You're just going to have to import more food. Makes sense from their point of view. Based on how things have been going, plant only what you are confident you can harvest next year. But this means nationally, we are now definitely going to be producing less food than we did before Brexit. Before we left the EU, when you tried to point out the problems with food production to Brexiteers, they would respond with the notion, oh, we'll just produce more of our own food. Their solution to every trade problem is just to produce more of our own. But the reality of Brexit is that we are producing less. It's not just that we produce the same amount and it's not enough, we're going to have to import more, it's more difficult and more expensive to import because of Brexit. We are producing less, so we have to import more. And it costs more because of Brexit to do that. Right now, we are producing less food than we would be doing if we'd at least remained in the EEA. Next year is going to be the same. There is no hoped-for solution to this. The army of British unemployed taking these jobs is not transpiring for a number of reasons. The first is something I keep saying, you have to match the jobs to the people without jobs. Most of the unemployed are in densely populated areas where there isn't much of a local economy. That's why there are so many unemployed. Farms, on the other hand, tend to be where the people are not. They don't build them in cities. They simply don't have the local workforce to cope. They are utterly dependent upon a seasonal workforce. And that means a migratory workforce. You cannot have a whole community living near a farm for just a few months' work a year. It's a brainless concept even for a Brexiteer. The second reason is, as I say, there are shortages in lots of other sectors in the economy right now. So there's a lot of competition for workers at the lower end of the wage scale. Farms not really going to compete with that, are they? And finally, something I hadn't really appreciated. So I saw reports, this is in the Financial Times, I think. There's been a few reports, where a farmer was quoted as saying that some of the workers he'd had to hire were less experienced and they were slower. And he said it was more economical to just abandon a whole field than to try and cope with slower pickers. So even if the government did manage to press gang some northerners to carry out this work, and they bust us all in and stuck us in a campsite each summer to do the work, it wouldn't make financial sense for the farmer to do that. But also, because of the shortage of farm workers, the wages have had to increase as well. Didn't realise this until recently. So they've had to increase their wages. So that makes sense. But that has apparently meant, so some of these migratory workers, you see, they just come for a certain amount of money, but it meant they quit before the summer was over because the wages were so high they'd already made the money they needed to early, went off for early holiday. So paying more, ironically, reduced the number of available workers even more. Brexit has a sense of humour. So they are planting less. That's it. They're just planting less. And this isn't just a few farms. It's reported to be quite widespread across a large range of fruits and vegetables. The cost of food will increase, of course. It's already increased. But what they mean is that it will go up even further. If a farmer who said that he didn't make money this year has to plan on a smaller harvest next year, the price of the produce has obviously got to go up to make sure that they can make some money next year. But that's not where the difficulties end. See, there was an expectation that more EU workers would return via the pre-settled status. The numbers who did were way down on expectations, possibly due to the way EU visitors have been treated by the Home Office, possibly due to the fact that, do you know what, they can just get work much more easily within the single market. Why would they go through all the hassle when they can just go to Germany or Belgium or their own country, wherever? British farmers have been managing thanks to a special immigration scheme this year for attracting migrant labour from abroad, not just in the EU, further on. In fact, most have come from Ukraine. According to the Home Office, they've had to go a lot further afield than just Europe. There's some from Nepal, some from Barbados. Still hasn't produced enough workers, and not as many were available as when we were in the single market. But it's better than nothing. But the government have apparently not committed to keeping the scheme in place long term. Now, if it were dropped, then even the reduction in harvest plans would not be sustainable. So shall we have a little recap? We don't have enough workers on farms, so farms are scaling back their planting for next year. That's ongoing. Nothing really is going to change that now. So our harvest will definitely be lower next year than it has been in previous years. So we're going to be more dependent on the import of crops. That means a Brexit cost for the UK, because we have to buy those in as a nation. And more business for the EU, who will get to sell it. We don't have enough workers in meat production, so that's hit as well. The latest crisis, as I discussed yesterday, is the lack of CO2, means pork and poultry processing has basically stopped. So the production of meat has been massively reduced as well compared to pre-Brexit years. So that means more dependence upon imports of some meat as well. Again, a Brexit cost to Britain, more business for the EU. And of course, when we say more business for the EU, they won't necessarily be able to scale up production. So that just means we have to pay a higher price for them. So not only are we going to have to import more, spending more money, but the cost per unit may go up as well. So another cost on top. Until, of course, we can get the cheaper, lower quality stuff from the intensive farming of Australia and the United States, that is. Then we continue to have our distribution problems. Not enough drivers. And no plan from the government to solve this that doesn't risk killing some of the few drivers we do have available. So even the extra imports of food that we need are not easy to get to the supermarket shelves when we have it. Certainly not reliably. And with unreliable distribution, that means more food is wasted. We're paying for it as a country, we're paying for it, it's going to waste. In a country where 1 in 8 people are in food poverty, we're letting an obscene amount of food just spoil. And for what? Is this something that's out of the government's control? No. For the Brexit ideology that almost nobody bought into. Not even the quarter of the population who voted for it. Because they weren't told this. Well, they were told it, they just were convinced it was Project Fear. And because all of this is down to that Brexit mindset, it will continue. It won't stop. The crises will continue to come and continue to build on one another. This is because we do not have a competent government. A competent government would foresee problems and mitigate against them before they arrive, which meant they go from a crisis to a problem, or maybe you've even dealt it before it arrives. And when they do hit, they don't deal with them. They don't deal with them at all. They put more effort into distracting us and blaming some bugger else than solving the problems. Largely, I suspect, because actually the root problem is them. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.